Welcome in to the Paul Kuharsky Podcast from the home studio, an undisclosed location in Brentwood, Tennessee, where there might or might not be black ice on the road. According to the Williamson County school system, enough for there not to have been school today. And we'll see about tomorrow. Paul Kuharsky at paulkuharsky.com. Thanks for coming. Tell your friends, retweet. If you're on YouTube, alert people. Let's discuss everything that's gone on here. I'm brought to you by Zen Sports, great place to bet, and EDLEY'S BBQ, a great place to eat. Go to EDLEY'S, get yourself a table, get yourself some food, open up the app, play some bets on the playoff games coming up this weekend. Lots of great games. Looking forward to watching some of those and not tracking what's going on with the Titans, who today removed Rand Carthon as general manager. Essentially gave Chad Brinker almighty power in the front office. He will hire a general manager. I did talk to him and to Burke Nihill for a bit this afternoon. I spelled out why they need a GM, why Brinker won't be the GM, more about Carthon and not being continuing to be employed, why Amy Adams Strunk won't speak, and all of that. And so we'll just let you guys guide the conversation here. I've got some notes on some things that I haven't written yet, but we'll go from there. I think from what I've seen on Twitter, from the questions that I've fielded on social media, on my texts, in my emails, people are largely confused as to who survived, who didn't, and why. Reasonable questions, all, I think. But this is what the Titans have going forward. And so I don't want to accelerate the process by any means. Let's hash it out. But ultimately, this is going to be who they go forward with, plus a general manager. I've written about Sullivan from Green Bay, who I think is a good candidate, who's connected to Chad Brinker, who I think would be good in this job. 4 firings today. Anthony Robinson, who was Rand Carthon's right-hand man in personnel once Brinker was elevated. Highsmith is there also. He remains. The security guy, people have objections to the firing of the security guy. Look, Brinker... And these moves may have come this January anyway, but Brinker oversees things like security, like video, like, operations. And today he fired the head of security, who's been around for a while, and 2 guys who go way, way back. So I know them personally, and I'm sad to see them to see them no longer be with the organization. And I think the Titans tend to be heartless with such firings. Director of football technology, Anthony Pastrana, who, led the film division, so to speak. So he was in charge of the videotaping of practices, the videotaping of games, the cut-ups that coaches and personnel guys would get of the Titans, of opponents, of college stuff, of whatever they needed. And Brett Akers was vice president of team operations. That's getting hotel stuff in order, getting equipment stuff in order for those guys to get things transported to where it needed to be and stuff. Pastrana with the team since 97, Akers with the team since 98. I've got a soft spot for people that endured those years, and I was around for those years myself. So hat tip to those guys. Sorry to see him go. Let's get into your questions here. Good to see so many of you here. I know people are really interested in the day's developments. Cy Ruskin, all right, PK, my faith in the organization is practically at 0. Is there anything positive to spin out of this? Well, I don't think Rand Carthon was great at his job. Him no longer being involved, I think, is not a bad thing. So one less, bad person involved isn't a bad thing. Is it sweeping enough? No, but I was a pleader for patience overall. Um, and so even Rand, I thought, deserved some more time. But I also didn't want to kick a guy who I didn't have a good relationship with, and I didn't want it to seem like I had sour grapes against Carthon by calling for him to be out. I don't think he was particularly good at his job. I think his player acquisition stuff was okay, but they have no stars on this team, no exemplary players, and he's been involved in 2 cycles of player acquisition and hasn't delivered any. And I've also heard a lot of complaints about him from the last regime. Some grumblings from people in the building currently, and from people when he got hired from outside who'd worked with him previously, all of whom just didn't think he was particularly greatly qualified or great at his job. Josh F. appreciates my work today. The most insight. WTF is going on with this clown organization? Look, Burke Nihill said he's empowered to speak on behalf of the organization, and Chad's empowered to speak on behalf of the football. We're not going to hear from Amy Adams Strunk, so we have to piece together what those guys have to say. I think they'll both be more visible. Certainly, Brinker's going to be more visible than Carthon was. I think Burke will be more visible than he has been, and that we'll get more information or get more answers from them. Will those answers create any more understanding of what they're doing and why they're doing it? No. I mean, Rand Carthon last year, was the greatest thing since sliced bread. He was going to be the engine of this great collaboration, and he had special skills. And now he's out the door. And Nihil's thing is, the GM job's changed, and what's asked of a GM in this organization now as compared to 2 years ago is different. No, it's not. They need a GM who, read the piece that I wrote of what Brinker's looking for in a GM. It's not vastly disparate from what the Titans were looking for in a GM when they hired Rand Carthon. They want a personnel superstar. Well, Rand Carthon was supposed to be a personnel superstar. Now, they're saying that he wasn't a personnel superstar by firing him. So don't tell me the job's changed. Tell me the talent of the guy you hired for a job wasn't what you expected it to be. But don't give me a big song and dance about how the job's changed. That's not what's changed. Ivan Gregory, hello. Kim Dunaway wants to be convinced the Titans haven't become the Browns. I think the Browns have a pretty good front office structure in place. I mean, I like Stefanski as a coach. Andrew Berry seems to know what he's doing. Outside of screwing up with Deshaun Watson, the Browns are in a good place. I'd want to be the Browns if I'm a Titans fan. I'd want to be the Browns. Robert Draper, is there a rational explanation for Brinker being given such clout, given that it's sure to scare off some GM candidates? I mean, he said, maybe it scares off some GM candidates. But if you're a guy who doesn't want to oversee the video operations, who doesn't want to oversee the equipment staff, who doesn't want to oversee security, and who just wants to be all ball all the time, this is a pretty good job for somebody that's who grew up like I did, wanting to scout and be of influence on that. And so, look, I think it's a messy situation, but I think there are guys who want to work their way up the ladder in NFL front offices who will like Chad Brinker and won't necessarily pass up a chance to work for him. I think he'll look to Green Bay for sure. And I think John Eric Sullivan, I think is his first name, John Eric, is a good candidate. Looks like a good guy. Now, is it a lateral move for him from vice president of personnel in Green Bay? Maybe. But if he comes here and they have success, he's even more attractive candidate for a job where he would have final say. And look, Matt LaFleur gave a hell of an endorsement to Chad Brinker, and Matt LaFleur is pretty damn good, successful NFL coach. And he said, Chad's, what did he say? I don't have it right in front of me, and I've been scrambling through a lot of stuff. But I'll find this quote, and it's a good one. And if I'm getting an endorsement from somebody in the NFL right now, Brinker's a stud. I'd work with him without any hesitation. That's from Matt LaFleur. So, I don't take that recommendation lightly. People think that I'm on Brinker. I'm not on Brinker. I just don't think we know that much about Brinker. And it's a fresh start for Brinker, the way it'd be a fresh start for anybody coming in from the outside. I mean, Brinker isn't responsible for a lot of what's gone wrong the last 2 years. John Eric Sullivan is the Packers vice president of player personnel. He worked with Brinker in Green Bay for 13 years. I think that would be a primary target early on here. What else we got here? Quick question from Xander. If they didn't think Carthon was qualified at the beginning, why do you think they hired him after Vrabel had concerns? Well, they did think he was qualified. The decision makers, Nye Hill, Amy Adams Strunk, clearly thought he was qualified. I don't think he turned out to be qualified. I think a lot of other people had questions about him, the people that wound up working with him in the Vrabel regime, and some people who had worked with him elsewhere didn't think he was qualified. Not the decision makers. The decision makers loved him, and they fell for his, backslapping relationship guy thing. That's good if you can form relationships with everybody, but if that's your primary thing, you're a relationship guy. Well, as I wrote, the relationship thing worked for him. In the case of Simmons, he found the route to a good relationship for Simmons. He formed a good relationship with Simmons's uncle, with Simmons's young, inexperienced agent. Those were good relationships, and they helped him bang out a long-term contract with Simmons. But I think if you also have to have relationships with people you don't have a good relationship with, right? Go back to Floyd Reese as an example. I think Floyd Reese, who was a good GM for a good while, found ways to make things work with people that didn't necessarily love him. You think everybody loved Bill Belichick, that Bill Belichick made things work with his GM hat on? I certainly don't think so. And so I think Rand's main skill, and the one that he pushed like crazy on people, was this relationship builder. Get along with everybody. Well, you didn't get along with everybody. You didn't get along with Mike Vrabel in the end. And some people who were quote unquote on Vrabel's side. He didn't get along with some people he worked with in two previous stops. So I just think it's oversold as a primary quality. Is that the primary quality you want in your top football executive, that he can get along with everybody? And I think that's why this Titans collaboration deal has failed. Yeah. I mean, you want the people ultimately to get along. But I think Callahan said this the other day, too. You hash things out. You have some disagreements. Then you make a decision, and it's the team's decision. And in the Titans instance now moving forward, if that decision needs to be ultimately made by somebody because you can't agree, Brinker's going to make it. Will Amy do another scripted interview and lie about a vision we never heard about? No, I don't think she will. I think her statement today is going to be what we hear from Amy Adams Strunk. I think they got blasted so badly for her doing a Mike Keith interview that she probably won't do one. And as I mentioned earlier, Bark Nihill said he's empowered to speak for the organization, and Brinker's empowered to speak for the football side of the organization. And that's going to be the direction they go. Merck, I owe you a text. PK, a theory. Amy hired Rand due to pressure from Goodell. Rand was in over his head. He wasn't ready and was lazy. He was the weak link. I mean, I don't think he was the strong link. And I wrote today about, some bad indications about him. He wasn't regarded as a grinder by other people who were definitely grinders. He left Will Levis's pro day early. Now, I've heard sometimes personnel people leave a workout early, but Will Levis is the guy that they banked things on. They traded a third rounder to get up into the second round to draft him. And if you're going to put that much resources into the guy, and then you're going to give him a year and a half of starts to try to give him every chance to be your franchise quarterback, if that's in the range of possibilities when you're at his pro day, why would you leave early? What do you got going on? He had a habit of napping on plane flights home, which was a turnoff to people who got on plane flights home and watched film. These are facts. These are not my opinions about things. It just seems like Amy is regretting moving on with Rand over Vrabel. Well, I don't know about that. The Vrabel thing's over. She can't do anything about the Vrabel thing. It's unfortunate for her, Robert. But all she could do is move forward with stuff now. It is ridiculous that a year ago, Vrabel is fired for not being able to collaborate with Carthon, right? That's largely the reason that Vrabel was sent packing. So Vrabel is not able to collaborate to Amy's satisfaction with Rand and with everybody and in the whole operation. So he's let go. And then what happens? A year later, Rand is fired for not being good enough at the job, I would say. And for not being good enough at the job, he's out. And Vrabel is the hottest property among all of these teams that are searching for head coaches, probably the number one candidate in New England. I expect he's going to be the number one candidate in Las Vegas. He's interviewed with the Jets. He's at least scheduled to interview with Chicago. And meanwhile, the Titans have a coach that won half as many games as Vrabel in his worst year, and they fired the guy that they fired Vrabel for not getting along with. I mean, you can only do so much looking back as to what you did, but I don't see how you wouldn't say you fired the wrong guy or you hired the wrong guy to set in motion the series of events you've made with your people starting 2 years ago. And that's why everything is a freaking mess now. Casey Booth says, I've been crushing it today. I appreciate it. Brinker has been here. Why is it going to be any different? Well, there's a difference. I'm not saying it's going to be different. I don't know what it's going to be with Brinker. But, that's like asking the coordinator becomes the head coach. Well, the coordinator's been here. Why is it going to be any different? Well, the coordinator wasn't calling the plays before. And the coordinator's calling the plays now. Doesn't it have potential to be different? If the play caller is different, if the CEO of the team coach-wise is different, there's a big difference between being a coordinator and being the head coach. I think there's a big difference between being president of football operations with a GM who has distinctly been carved out to be in charge of personnel, and now being told that you have final authority on all football decisions and you can hire a GM of your choosing. Those are two vastly different roles, are they not? Why the security guy? I don't know. I wasn't a big fan of the security guy either, but I mean, I don't know why, but I don't think he fired him at random. He didn't like something about the way he did his job, but we can't pretend to know why or why not. I mean, I'll be devil's advocate on that. Is everybody entitled to keep their job just because they have a job? I mean, I don't know anything about how the security guy did his job. And I don't know much about Anthony Robinson except he's exceptionally quiet and very much Rand's guy. So that's why he's out. He's very much Rand's guy. The other two guys, Brent Akers and Anthony Pastrana, I've known for years and years and years. And I think they're grinders who work their ass off for the organization for, 25 plus years. And I think it's a shame to see them out. How much more attractive does having the number one pick make us if they know they won't have much final say? Number one pick doesn't make you that attractive. I mean, it's one time that you have the number one pick. The guy's coming here hopefully to work for, he would imagine a decade or more. One first round pick. It's not a deciding factor. I bet he'd like to live in Nashville, whoever the guy is. If he's coming from Green Bay, certainly would. Is Shedeur worth taking simply from giving this franchise an identity standpoint? No, Mark. If Shedeur's not a good player, who cares if he gives you an identity? If your identity is we've got a shitty quarterback who takes a ton of sacks and isn't an NFL caliber guy, he was just good, 3/4 of the time at Colorado, that's not an identity. That's a reach. John Kemper, let's pay the bills. Bet at zensports.com. Eat at Edley's. He recommends the smoked wings. Thank you, Kemper. You are the man. Zen Sports, go there. Make a $10 bet. Use the code when you sign up. This is Tennessee only. Use the code TNPaul. Use the code TNPaul. Make a $10 bet, at least a $10 bet. You can make up to $1,000 bet on anything up to 500 plus 500, right? You make that bet, and then you get a no danger first wager. So you either win the bet, stockpile a nice account there. You lose the bet, 24 hours, within 24 hours, the money's back in your account. Risk-free. On top of that, you get a free account at paulkuharsky.com. Value $81. Nice. I don't have any picks for you yet this weekend. Hopefully I'll do at least one more broadcast this week, and I will have a pick for you. And JT Runke, my fine producer, will also have a pick for you. And we've done pretty well. I was pretty good against the spread in our pick pool I was in with John Kemper. I don't know if John Kemper saw it through. I don't know if John Kemper did the picks to the end. There were only like 6 guys of the all-22 that did the picks to the end. Dwayne won by 1 game. And I think 3 of us beat the coin flip, which was very impressive. Eat at Edley's. Listen, the fried ribs fall off the bone. They're so tasty. It's unbelievable. 8 locations around Middle Tennessee. I broadcast Thursday afternoon at noon from East Nashville, 5 Points. Come have lunch with me. It'll be great. You can pop on air and ask a question over my shoulder. Show your friends you're on the podcast. And I also go to Franklin and Berry Hills. That's my home base. This place, absolutely delicious. You cannot get better barbecue in or around Middle Tennessee. Trust me. Go there, eat there, get addicted. PK, which Sanders son did I have on Midday 180 years ago to take up for his dad for not knowing who Kevin Byard was? I am virtually certain it was not Shedeur Sanders. Shedeur Sanders seems slightly more sensible than this guy. Sean says I look exhausted, so I really appreciate that. Thanks very much. Stoney Keeley says he needs another drink. I don't know if he's exhausted. I've had a long day. I will admit it. My mom's leaving back from New Jersey on Thursday. I've spent 0 time with her today. I also have a Music City Miracle piece that I want to put up tomorrow that I am not close to done with. 25th year anniversary. And I'm going to get up at 5 a.m. to go be on Robbie and Rex Road for all 3 hours tomorrow. So we can't talk about this enough. The GM job isn't posted on their website. We know how posting goes, Jared. First, you find the person you intend to hire, then you post. Then you post it. What was the dynamic between Brinker and Vrabel? I don't know for sure. I suspect it was not fantastic. I suspect it was better than it was between Vrabel and Carthon. That is the best. Was Carthon a Cam Ward guy? I have no idea anything about Carthon. I can show you my text screen. I stopped texting Rand quite some time ago when all I was looking for was confirmation of transactions that were already publicly known. I haven't talked to Rand Carthon maybe since the owners meeting in the spring. Maybe texted me back once or twice since then. The idea that I would know anything about who he liked in the draft is crazy. Teron Davenport reported that the Titans only like one quarterback. I hope at that stage, but I think it's ridiculous that they would have a firm stance on any quarterbacks before Brian Callahan's involved in the process, when Brian Callahan's going to be crucial, should be crucial to the process. Jeremy says, in his opinion, Amy really effed up. If you make a move like this at a time like this, you rip up the whole thing. You rip the whole thing down. Brinker, Callahan, all of them. I don't know why. I mean, I don't think what she's done is great here, but I don't know why what she's done is inconceivable. I don't know why it's inconceivable. Christopher, I asked the same question. Why not just have Brinker be GM? I talked to him about it. I wrote a piece about it that's up at paulkuharsky.com. He said it's too big. GM is not like in the 1990s anymore. There's too much work to be done in the front office, and you need the position that he has and a GM position. And so it can't be there. Jacqueline is in love with Rand. She says he was a good GM. Stop lying. As if being a good GM or a bad GM is a factual thing. If it is, in fact, a factual thing, then he would have a couple players who are Pro Bowl or all-pro caliber, and he does not. He's not brought in anybody of that caliber in the 2 years that he's had influence on the roster. So I don't know how you can say that. And you can like the personality. We're talking about the work product. He did hit on some draft picks. I mean, Jarvis Brownlee's the best hit. That's a 5th-round pick who's a starting caliber cornerback with a lot of promise. You know, you could say Latham's a hit. Well, Latham's a 7th pick in the draft, and he ended the season in a big downturn, and it's reasonable to wonder, is he for sure left tackle? All right, 7th pick in the draft, you should have no doubt about him heading into his second year. There are doubts about Latham. People love Sweat. Sweat's a good run stopper, very, very good run stopper. Doesn't get involved in the pass rush enough for me for a 2nd-round pick. I think you have to have more out of him. Are there encouraging signs? Yes. Might he turn out to be a very good player? Yes. Is he great right now heading into his second year the way a 2nd-rounder can be that you would like him to be? No, he's not. Skoronski, 11th pick in the draft, got much better this year. Is he going to be what you would want a guard in the high 1st round to be? All-pro caliber guy? No, he's not going to be that. That's not a good pick. I like him personally. I think he's going to be a good player. But is he worth the 11th pick in last year's draft? Absolutely not. Tyjae Spears, 3rd rounder, part-time player. That's not a good pick at all. And I like Tyjae Spears with the ball in his hand in space. He's terrific. But you can't spend a 3rd-round pick on that. You can't. Walton, do I think Rand was not as involved as they wanted him to be? I saw some things, and maybe I wrote them, that said he wasn't as team-oriented and get right to work as the new person they will look for. I don't think he was a grinder. I wrote pretty much that he wasn't a grinder. So if he was a grinder, would he have had a better chance of staying? Yes. Jacqueline asks who I would have chosen. Well, I didn't think they should have fired Vrabel. Now, I don't think they should have given Vrabel power over hiring the GM or power over personnel, but I would have given Vrabel power, voice in who he was going to work with. So if Vrabel said, no, I don't really want to work with Rand, I would have chosen somebody else. Now, maybe I wouldn't have given him Ryan Cowden, who he wanted, but I would have said, all right, well, let's go back to the drawing board and find somebody that you do like. Todd, a lot. CW says, the next guy is going to be Brinker's puppet. I mean, there are people who work for people all over the NFL. Good people who work for people all over the NFL. Like, you think coordinators don't want to be coordinators because they're the puppet of the head coach? Terry says he wouldn't be shocked if Fisher came as GM. You should be shocked because there's no chance in hell that it happens. It's just ridiculous. Are we coming in here to throw out just absolutely ridiculous shit? Because that's absolutely ridiculous shit. Is it safe to say that Brinker is the most qualified person in the building? Well, they fired Anthony Robinson. I don't think Anthony Robinson was particularly qualified. Highsmith, hasn't had as much experience. Yeah. I mean, there's not a lot to choose from in the building. He's already the president of football operations. He didn't get a new title. So is the president of football operations the most qualified person to be president of football operations on the staff? I mean, I don't think that's really difficult. Now, a lot of people think that I'm into Brinker. I'm not into Brinker. I've spoken to Brinker. Brinker is able to answer basic questions. I spoke to him today. He answered basic questions. I asked him some questions. He was able to answer them. That's a step up from Rand in terms of the direction of the franchise and what he wants to do and things like that. Is it a home run? Does it mean he's going to draft all pros? No. He said they need 7 game changers among their starters, 7 impact players. I mean, that is a more specific, direct answer than we've gotten from the franchise on anything from front office person since John Robinson was fired. Does that mean he's good? No. Does that mean there's a guy that's going to tell us some things? Yes. Do I prefer a guy who's going to tell us some things? Absolutely, without apology. I'm sorry. That makes me terrible. I wasn't in favor of firing everybody. I was in favor of some patience. Does that make me terrible? I don't know. The idea that whoever they hired to replace Callahan, Brinker, Carthon were going to be automatically better is also ridiculous. So, Dixie, where is Burke involved in football decisions? I mean, Burke is a chief advisor to Amy Adams Strunk. Somebody has to advise her. Now, is he any good at that? He was when they hired John Robinson. He was when they hired Mike Vrabel. Has he been lately? I don't know. He was a linchpin guy in getting the stadium built, and they got a pretty fucking good deal on the stadium. But outside of that, he's not making any football decisions. He's got nothing to do with players they choose or anything like that. I would think Louis Riddick would want more than what the Titans have to offer. And the amount of Louis Riddick stuff I got tells me that people just watch ESPN. What happens when the new GM does a great job and then wants final say? Take your chances on that. When I got the job at the Tennessean, there was a guy named Kevin Proctor. He's still an editor there at what's left of the Tennessean. He told them not to hire me because I was going to be good and I was going to leave and get another job. And the main sports editor said, if this guy comes and gives us a couple really good years and moves on, that's great. We'll say he worked for us and we helped launch his career. And then we'll hire another guy and maybe do the same thing. Why do we want to hire a lesser guy because we're confident he'll stay here longer? That's small-sighted. So if they hire a good GM and he does a great job for them and they have to sort out, well, he wants final say somewhere else, so maybe he would aspire to that and leave. What a great problem to have. Don't hire him because he might leave? It's ridiculous. Burke Nihill is the president of the team. He's speaking instead of Amy. That's Berg asking, who is he and why am I hearing so much from him? I mean, Sergeant Bubbles talking about Amy being so dysfunctional. Somebody else said, like, well, other owners don't talk. I mean, in the last couple of days, we've heard from Jim Irsay, Shad Khan, and Robert Kraft at major decision-making points for their franchises. Jerry Jones, of course, talks regularly. So, do I see the timing of hiring a new GM in January as a significant problem? That's when new GMs get hired. I mean, it's not ideal in terms of the scouting cycle, but that's when new GMs get. When's the last time we saw a GM fired after the draft? Nobody lets their GM stay on through April to draft the new talent and then fires them. GMs get fired based on the win-loss records of their teams, and their hiring cycle is the same as coaches. How do the Ravens do it every single year? They're really good. Eric DaCosta took a handoff from Ozzie Newsome. They've had the same coach for a long time. See all the stability there? So that had to start somewhere, right? I'm not saying that these are the guys that it's going to be with the Titans, but you got to start it somewhere. This is bullshit, this thing about the structure. The league investigated the Titans structure in the past. That was ownership structure. The league had a beef with the ownership structure. They can't possibly have a beef with the front office structure. Rand Carthon, when he came, had less power than he got last year. When he came, he was not the decision-making GM. He accepted a job that was not the decision-making general manager of the Tennessee Titans. He came into a collaborative thing where nobody knew who was making the decisions, right? There was no final say guy. Last year, while he got demoted in title, he gained power to make the decisions on the roster. So what are they investigating? Rand Carthon's complaint about the front office structure has no basis. He had more power in the second year of the job he was fired from than he had in the first year. Plus, there is no obligation for front office structure for who makes decisions or what. Now, maybe contractually there is, but the contract he signed clearly didn't call for him to have decision-making power, because the first year of the contract, he didn't have decision-making power. And the second year of the contract, he got decision-making power added to it. So what is the beef about that? There's no investigation of structure. There couldn't be, because a team can structure its front office however the fuck it wants. And now the president of football operations is going to have final say. And a GM is going to come in and his contract is not going to give him final say. Unless they're violating contracts, what's the problem? And we know that Rand Carthon's contract did not call for final say, because his first year he didn't have final say, but his second year he did. All right, I'm scrolling way down here, kind of catch up. Great to see so many of you here. Let's retweet. If you're listening on Apple, if you are listening on iHeart, if you are listening on Spotify, I appreciate it. It's good to have you, and I hope you will like, rate, review, subscribe, all of those great things. I appreciate you. And a lot of you are complimenting my coverage today, which I very much appreciate it. Look, to get all of it, you need to be a member of paulkuharsky.com. So I urge you, come join. It's $7.50 a month, really a pittance if you think about what you pay for coffee, what you pay for a cocktail. Come join. You get everything that we have from me, from Blake Bedingfield, who will be chiming in at times throughout the offseason, from Mike Herndon, the great analyst. And look, I'm going to dig. I'm going to give you unique perspective, and I'm going to give you a voice of reason that many of you are complimenting me for being here in the comments. CA, who's a regular in here, says we should have kept Vrabel with the understanding a grown man would need to come in and run offense. He would not need to be micromanaged and promote his boys. Other than that, Vrabel was great. I agree. And I think Vrabel's the best candidate on the market now, provided he is giving you assurances about who he's hiring as offensive coordinator. And it can't be recycling Todd Downing or Tim Kelly. It's got to be a strong offensive coordinator. And given that, and better coaches overall. Stop with this, I can turn this guy into something, or I can fix this guy. Hire good coaches across the board. He had a lot of good people on his staff throughout his tenure, but his weak links were too weak. You can't hire a guy who's getting punch blocked at Page High School. Jeremy Martin, good to see you. The way this organization has run things over the last 3 years is quickly becoming kryptonite to future candidates. My hat's off to anyone who has the courage to attempt coming on board this dumpster fire. Look, it's not the most attractive place to come. It's not. But it is one of 32 teams in the league. And again, there are people who like the people that are here. I think, Brian Callahan's got a tough sales pitch to hire assistant coaches to replace whoever doesn't last on this staff, because he's on a short leash, you have to think. And, Chad Brinker is selling an opportunity here. It's going to be somebody that believes in Chad Brinker, but Chad Brinker's got some good people speaking out on his behalf, including publicly Matt LaFleur, who said great things about him to me at the owners meeting back in the spring. This doesn't matter. LT3 is saying the Spears pick happened when you still had Derrick Henry. So you have Derrick Henry so you can devalue your third round pick into a backup? No, you take a backup running back in the 5th round. In the 3rd round, you find a starter. If you don't need a starting running back, guess what? You don't take a running back. You take something else where you need a starter. Maybe, I don't know, edge rusher where they don't have sufficient personnel and haven't had sufficient personnel for some time. Maybe a safety who could graduate into a starting spot when you decide Kevin Byard's done, which was coming. There are a lot of positions that could have addressed with people who are going to start instead of a backup running back. And there are a lot of backup running backs you can get later in the draft. You can love Tajay Spears there, and that's great. But if he's not a practical pick for you because his role isn't going to be 3rd round level, well, you say, hey, we love that kid. We'll keep an eye on him. If he comes free someday, maybe he'll be our guy. But we're not going to get enough out of him at 3rd round. At 3rd round, we need 50 snaps a game, not 15. He could start. He needs opportunity. He could start, says Eddie. They signed fucking Tony Pollard. He's not starting. He wasn't starting ahead of Derrick Henry. He's not starting ahead of Tony Pollard. It doesn't matter what he could do. It matters what he's going to do. You spend a 3rd round pick on him. You have to spend the 3rd round pick on somebody who is going to make a substantial contribution to your team. This is not rocket science. This is basic sense. Better picks than Dodd, Corey Davis, Adoree', Rashaan Evans, Wilson, Farley, Burks. Sure. But go back to the beginning. I mean, he had 3 All-Pros in his first draft. Conklin, Henry, Byard. There's nobody that's been put on this roster in the last 2 years that is Conklin, Henry, or Byard. Not one. But he had 3. Not one. Callahan's not giving up plays. Callahan, and he's not a terrible play caller either. I mean, he called some plays that opened some things up, and players didn't execute them great. He was not good in the red zone. and he's got to get better. Callahan's got to shred up everything he did this year and review it and be a terribly harsh critic of himself and come back a new guy. But he's not giving up play calling. He said so earlier this week. And I don't think he should. Gary says, this is starting to feel a little bit like when Bud was calling the shots. The floggings will continue until morale improves. Building a winner takes time, patience, and knowledge. Well, I don't know how morale improves before they start winning. You have to hit some personnel home runs. Those personnel home runs get you some wins. Those wins get you some morale. I don't see how morale can come first. Monty Ossenfort, I liked a lot, but Monty Ossenfort was a Robinson guy, and I don't know. I mean, you could have forced Monty Ossenfort on Vrabel, and I think it would have ultimately worked. But I don't know that that Mike would have been real happy with that at the start. CW says successful teams, the GM only answers to the owner, not to a Brinker type. Well, most franchises, the GM is that level. There is no Brinker role. So it's a new, different structure. Can it work? Yes. Will it work? We have no idea. But I mean, the fewer people reporting to Amy and the less Amy's involved, if she's giving, ideally, let Burke run the business. Let Brinker, presuming he's any good, run football and stay the hell out of it. Matthew says, thoughts on how we as fans are to expect Chad Brinker to correct course after working in a front office where we just fired the GM. Well, I mean, it's not uncommon for teams to fire GMs, head coaches. How do they course correct? Well, they work to do better than the guy who was fired did. Can he? I don't know. It's his job to try. Sergeant Bubbles jokes, let Brinker cook. Stay away from slogans for anybody. Look, expect nothing. Expect very little. When they sign a guy, don't do cartwheels. Don't buy his T-shirt. Don't buy his jersey. Be skeptical of everything and wait for them to prove stuff on the field. Wait for everything to be proven on the field. I'm going to take this approach now, right? Give everything a chance, right? Everybody new deserves a chance. I didn't like Will Levis' pick. I wasn't a Will Levis guy coming out of the draft. But when they draft Will Levis, it's my professional obligation to say, all right, now I see what the guy does for the Tennessee Titans organization. I don't know if Chad Brinker can pick better players, can facilitate better players coming in. I don't know if he could provide a better atmosphere for Callahan to have better success. But he is, in effect, the new guy. And the new guy gets a chance from me. I think the new guy gets a chance. It's been a dysfunctional organization. This is the new slate that they're jumping off to see if they can be at least less dysfunctional. In my role, I've got an obligation to now watch what they do and report on it and comment on it. I'm not going to predetermine that it's going to be shit. I'm going to watch it and see what unfolds and comment on it. And make them prove stuff. I'm going to be more skeptical because 2 years ago, I wasn't skeptical enough as stuff was unfolding until I saw it on the field not be good. And last year, while I didn't have any great expectations of them, I also wasn't skeptical enough. And I'm mad at myself because I'm a skeptic. What else we got here? Chance we get an Eli Manning if we draft Shador. You're not going to get an Eli Manning situation by surprise. You know about it in advance. So you only know, you'll know about it in advance. You're not going to draft Shador Sanders and find out he doesn't want to play for you. If they're going to make it a sticky situation, they're going to tell you about it ahead of time. This is a funny thing for sure. Still have J-Rob's scouts, which is funny in all this discussion. Bottom line, Amy better than Bud at first, but she's regressed and loves arranged marriages instead of head coach GM on the same timeline. It's a bad thing. Scouting is a big question. Look, and this is something that'll tell us a lot about Chad Brinker. When the draft is over, will he finally make moves with scouts? Will he finally make moves with scouts? That's a big question. We got about less than 10 minutes left. Cool, Daddy. You got a lot of reading to do to catch up. I'm not going to spend time on that. UW Callahan is apparently getting a pass. It's not getting a pass. They're not happy with the 3-14 record, but they're acknowledging the roster wasn't good enough, and and they're saying that they think he's got a chance to grow and be better. Robert Draper, appreciate your humility, PK. Callahan also expressed a lot of it. Rand's every box checked. Carthon had a deficit in this department. I think that's fair. Do I think, Alex asks, some of the decisions made in the personnel department are an attempt to move past the notion that Titans are traditionally archaic football team in regards to the offense? I mean, they spent their last 2 first-round picks on offensive linemen. That's pretty old school approach. I'm not saying it wasn't necessary. It's absolutely necessary, but that's pretty old school approach. Build from the trenches. What pick have they made? They haven't picked a wide receiver high since Burks, who was a disaster. Modern teams are picking wide receivers high, and the Titans need to do that. They need to have a guy who can change the game, a young guy. The only thing that it was an attempt to move past the notion that they're archaic was getting running backs who can catch the ball. And I don't have any problem with that. I mean, I like Spears as a pass catching running back. He wasn't healthy this year. He's overdrafted. But man, my phones are making a lot of noise. And Pollard was a good signing for moving on from Derrick Henry and trying to round out that element of the football team and be less predictable there. So I don't have any issue with those things. So I don't think they're doing anything for show. I mean, I think they failed at a lot of things, but not because they're trying to do stuff for show. Josh asks if I'm expecting a Brinker presser this week. I was, but now, and I haven't read a lot of what other people have done. You guys can tell me. Our story's popping up everywhere that he's talked to a bunch of people. I know I got him for 10 minutes today with Burke on the phone, which I don't know. I don't really need Burke. I mean, I'm happy to have a chance, but today, if I have 10 minutes, I want him with Brinker. So if he was talking to people individually like that today, then they're doing that instead of a press conference. Quite frankly, it's better than a press conference, though he's answering the same questions multiple times to multiple people. And in a half an hour press conference, we might have got more depth. Robbie Stanley says he's going to bookmark this tweet and see if this time next year I'm doing a live video for the firing of Brian Callahan. It's an annual tradition. Could be. Robbie Stanley, ladies and gentlemen, I will be his guest tomorrow, 6 to 9 on Robbie and Rex Road. We'll see if Rexroad can handle the black ice and actually drive into the station. It's my understanding, and I'm no chemist, that for there to be ice, there needs to be water. And I don't live far from Rexroad, and there's no water. So, should Titans fans give up on a first-round wide receiver anytime in the near future with Brinker's Green Bay background? That's funny. He can be a Green Bay guy who didn't agree with Green Bay's refusal to draft wide receivers. But I can understand being scared of that. Titans also have a pretty good history of not taking first-round wide receivers or taking shitty ones. Hello, Kendall Wright. Hello, Traylon Burks. Robert Price. If you're not a member of PK's website, what are you waiting for? There's a spot open in the All-22. This week alone was worth the investment if you love the Titans. All-22. Got a lot of stuff today. Some stuff ahead of the curve and some stuff that is not for public consumption. My work today, Mr. Cantu says, was worth more than $7.50. Nobody was totally sold on Levis after the season. I don't know. Maybe Rand was. Josh Biggs. He hadn't talked to anybody about it. But when Brian Callahan told Will they would be bringing in another quarterback, nobody was surprised by that. That's pretty well established when they benched Will 3 or 4 games before the season was over. Couple more. We're at 57 minutes. Any idea if it was decided in advance or after a meeting with Rand? I think it was decided in advance. I've heard that they set some search things in order, even as early as Sunday. So I wonder if Rand knew about that. Green Bay doesn't draft wide receivers in the first round, so that draft style with Brinker will fit in right here. Somebody already said that. Sorry. Pollard came up 24 yards short of his 1,100-yard bonus. Should the team go ahead and give it to him? I don't think they should give him the whole thing, but I do think based on the fact that they held him out and he wanted to play in week 17, that it would be cool if they gave him a token. So I don't know why John Albertson got fired. I don't have much dealings with John Albertson. I'm a Jeb guy. Curtis, as I've said through this podcast, I talked to Brinker for 10 minutes today. Happy 25th anniversary of the Music City Miracle. I've talked to Lorenzo and I've talked to Kevin, and I will have that story up hopefully tomorrow morning if I can keep myself awake to finish it tonight. It's just going to be them talking really about how it changed their lives. Maybe I'm due to put something behind the wall. Raise your hand if you want that behind the wall. Saw some reports that I presume Sam is talking about Drew Allar, Penn State. Saw some reports that he would come out if he was told he'd be the first quarterback, first overall. I think that is an interesting concept there. And I think he's an intriguing guy. I look forward to watching him in this next game with that in mind. And if the Titans, if he's that good, I don't know. I haven't watched him as much as you guys have, but if he's that good, if he's that promising, if he's 1.1 next year, that might be the way to go. Hey V, $7.50 a month or $81 annually for subscription. Head right over to paulkuharsky.com. On your computer web browser, there's a membership button across the top, or if you're on your phone, 3 dashes, hit that, and that'll expand and give you a membership option. Thanks for asking. Eat at EDLEY'S BBQ. Bet at Zen Sports. paulkuharsky.com. If you use code TNPaul and bet at least $10 on your first bet, you get a free membership to paulkuharsky.com, $81 value. I really appreciate so many of you coming here. Go to paulkuharsky.com, read everything today, as with most news-related things, not behind a wall, but you'll see the kind of quality you're getting for the membership. So I hope you will sign up. A lot of testimonials in here. That's the reason you should join. This podcast will be up in the not too distant future on Apple, on Spotify, on iHeart. I appreciate all of you. Don't block the box. And please be very sure to lock your locks. Good night, everybody. We'll talk again soon.